Good afternoon, to all. Myself, Sheija, is Program Manager, SAP Palakkad. Welcome to the SAP District Webinar Series 19, organized by SAP Team Palakkad, CSP Chatanur, and CSP Luckily. Today, we have a very interesting webinar session. It is use of ICT and multimedia in teaching and research. The session will be handled by Dr. Krishnakumar Kishore, Associate Professor, ECE Department, Alahia School of Engineering and Technology, Palakkad. He completed his bachelor, master, and PhD degrees in electrical engineering from the University of Toronto, Canada. During his master and PhD degree, he was with the electromagnetic group at the University of Toronto, where he worked on antenna designs for space applications and mobile devices. He is also the Assistant Director Academics at Alahia Health, Heritage and Knowledge Village, Palakkad. He is a member of the IEEE, the IEEE Antennas and Propagation Society, IEEE Microwave Theory and Technique Society, Institute of Engineers India, and the Indian Society for Technical Education. On behalf of SR, sir, I welcome you to the session. Participants, you can ask your questions by pressing the raise hand option, or you can raise the questions in the Q&A box. All your queries will be addressed at the end of the session. Expecting your wholehearted cooperation throughout the session. Thank you all. Sir, once again, welcome to the session. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Sheija. I hope I'm audible. The title of my talk today is, was mentioned earlier, is use of ICT and multimedia in teaching and research. Um, I hope we'll all appreciate the need for such a topic presently, especially in present and where most of the things are happening offline, or where and more are happening online. So here is my talk. First, I'll briefly go over what I mean by ICT and multimedia. Um, then, then I'll speak about why is it relevant for the teaching, learning, and research processes. We will look at the role of ICT and multimedia in teaching. This I have divided into two categories. One is inside the classroom, and the second category is outside the classroom. The next one will be about the role of ICT in research. And finally, we'll summarize with some conclusions. Let's get started. So, what does ICT? ICT refers to information and communication technology. It basically refers to uh, um, any product that will store, retrieve, or that is what the ICT utilizes. So, and there are a variety of content forms. For example, there is text, there is audio, there is images, there is video, there is interactive content, there is games, and just like today's talk, there is online talks, webinars, lectures, and so on. Right. So this is the content. So it's important to distinguish the hardware part and the content that we are utilizing. Right. And like they always say, content is king. Right? So moving on to the next slide. So why is it that we're talking about ICT and multimedia, especially in the context of teaching, learning, and research? Now, ICT, as we all know, is being adopted in all aspects of life. So, for example, we have communication devices like mobile phones, smart TV, tablets. Then, the transportation industry has been revolutionized. For example, we all use Uber. There are drones coming out now that are autonomous and self-driving vehicles. Uber, as we all know, is purely a ride-sharing app, right? They don't own any physical hardware. That's a taxi. Then the shopping industry industry has been revolutionized. For example, Amazon and Flipkart, mobile and internet banking, the computer hardware, desktops have come out, laptops have come out, tablets have come out, smartphones have come out. The agriculture industry, for example, traditionally we had greenhouses, but now we have smart greenhouses. The food industry, for example, Zomato, Swiggy, and so on. The defense sector, the travel sector, for example, TripAdvisor, Make My Trip. So these are all industries or sectors of the economy that have been revolutionized by the oncoming of IT. And so as ICT, as these hardware devices have come out, as all these hardware devices have been progressing, the quantity and the variety of the content has also exploded. So it's not much of a surprise that the teaching, learning, and research areas have also been affected because of the oncoming of ICT and multimedia. And if you look upon UNESCO's website, UNESCO, a global organization, recognizes the importance of ICT and multimedia. And what it states is that information and communication technology can contribute to universal access to education, equity in education, the delivery of quality learning and teaching, teachers' professional development, and more efficient education management, governance, and administration. So this covers sort of the entire aspect about education. It's not only the teaching and the learning part, but also the administration part of teaching, and so on. So it's like I said. It's only expected that the teaching sector, the learning sectors, and the research sectors are affected by ICT and multimedia. So that's the first two parts of my talk. Now let's come on to the role of ICT and multimedia in teaching. As teachers, our primary audience, whatever we say, or you can call them customers even, are students. And our goal is to make our students valuable members who can contribute to society. Now, when I say students, don't get me wrong in the sense that I'm not only referring to school going children or college going children. Anyone who is undergoing learning or who is learning something new can be considered a student. So our goal is to make these students valuable members who can contribute positively to society. And a teacher's role is varied. It's no longer simply teaching, and that's it, right? We have to be a mentor sometimes. We'll have to be a counselor at some points. We will have to be a role model sometimes, and all this requires understanding the student in a little bit more depth. So in that sense, the teachers have to go the extra mile. Is understanding what are some of the problems that particular student has faced. Maybe there are issues at home, or something like that, or something is on his mind that is worrying him. So in those cases, as a teacher, we might have to be a mentor at some point, counselor, a role model, and sometimes we have to be strict as well. So in that sense, we are a disciplinarian. Teachers have to be very good planners because they must have a very good idea of how to plan the syllabus and how to cover the required syllabus in the given point of time. Um, a teacher these days also have to be a researcher. It's well known that teachers who are constantly updating their knowledge or who themselves are good students will become good teachers. So, in that sense, a teacher must be a good researcher as well. Now, at some point, for some students, teachers might have to take out the role of a third parent. So, it's a very individualized or a very personalized profession now, right? So now coming back to so what happens? What's the role of ICT inside the classroom? Inside the classroom, when a teacher goes inside the class, the primary goal Right? The primary goal is to help the students learn, understand, appreciate, and apply the concepts. Right? This is very important. In any class, if you're having a 1 hour class or even a half an hour class, the moment the teacher goes inside the classroom, the point of it is to help the students learn, understand, appreciate, and apply concepts. This can be things inside the syllabus, outside the syllabus, but that's our primary goal. Now, so we must understand that as teachers, we must understand that students are at different learning levels. These days we classify students, some of them as slow learners, some of them as fast learners. But the point of such classification is to appreciate that different students might have different learning capabilities. Um, Also, a teacher must understand that the students will learn and understand concepts very differently. For example, some students might, learn by writing. For example, when they're writing down notes in the class, that's when things stick in their head. Some of them, might be through touch. For example, they might appreciate lab sessions more, or maybe inside a classroom, maybe a working model will help them understand a concept more. Or sometimes we have all seen students. When you're teaching, we might have students who are not taking down any notes at all, right? But that doesn't mean they're bad students. What they're doing is they're learning through their ears. So they are hearing concepts and they're paying total attention to what the teacher is saying. So it's important to understand that students learn and understand concepts very differently. And also in a class, there might be differently abled students. For example, there might be a student with a hearing aid disability, or maybe with a seeing disability. So the teacher must appreciate such kind of a varied audience inside a class. It's also important to actively engage the students. This is not only inside the classroom, but also outside the classroom. Then a teacher must encourage collaboration, discussion, and question and answer sessions. We learn the most. It's not only important that the teacher keeps giving answers. The teacher must build the capability inside the student to ask questions. And that was the last. Teacher must be willing to try new techniques. A recent on now is the flipped classroom, right? So they must be willing to try new techniques. As teachers, we might have taught for several years, but it's important to understand that even though we have been teaching for several years, the audience is changing, the students are changing. So as time progresses, the audience changes. So as the audience change, we should try new techniques, and we must adapt our teaching styles to meet their learning goals. So moving on to the next slide. So now to help a teacher or to help any instructor, not only a teacher, to achieve these various goals, there are various tools or teaching aids that are available. In addition to the traditional, for example, the blackboard teaching aid. To that, we all there might be a PC inside a classroom connected to a projector. So, there are various teaching aids that are available. For example, the projector. This is something that we are all familiar with. Then there is the newer kinds of ones called the interactive whiteboard. This is where the students can go on. It's an interactive in the sense that students can touch the board. When you touch a button, something happens. Students can play around with models. You can have a 3D model. Things students can rotate it and things like that. So it's a lot more interactive, and this is coming up in a lot of schools these days. This is the older kind, a transparency. Um, you know, um, you sort of print whatever you want on a transparency sheet, and you put it on this sort of projector, and then and what you print on that transparency gets projected onto the screen. So this is the older kind. You don't see this a lot often these days. But then we also have the tablet PC. This is kind of nice because the device comes with a built-in stylus. So as teachers write, that gets projected on the screen directly. So imagine if you're connecting this tablet PC onto a projector. If you write on that screen, it gets projected on the screen. So that's kind of nice. So this is another teaching aid that is available. And the full extent of what we call a true smart class is a fully connected setup. Every student has a mobile device that is connected. And the teacher has control. There is a display board. So that's a very lively environment where the student teacher walks around and goes around helping students. Then there are these buzzers. That is kind of nice, if you want to go and have a quiz in class. So then you can have, some set of buzzers, say 4 or 5 or 10 buzzers, divide students into teams, and then you ask certain questions, and they can press a buzzer, and then the light pops up, and then it becomes a lot more interactive. Um, then there are a variety of other audiovisual aids as well. You can have images, you can have audio podcasts, you can have movies, you can have online lectures, 3D animation software, and so on. So there are various tools that are available. Now, it's important that these are again just the ICT part. The content has to come from the teacher. Different concepts, for example, when you're teaching mathematics, you might have to use a different teaching aid. It might be different when you're teaching physics, or it might be a different teaching aid when you're teaching biology. Right? So it's again, we must remember these are all teaching aids, right? It's not a substitute for a teacher. So this is what we talked about was what happened inside the classroom, how we can utilize how ICT and multimedia plays a role inside the classroom. Equally important is what happens outside the classroom. Now, when we talk about this, the primary goal in this case is to facilitate 24/7 learning. Now, this doesn't mean that students are going to learn 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? All it means is that the ICT and multimedia is appreciating that the students are individuals who are busy people, and and they have their own lives outside the classroom. So again, like I said before, the students need not always be referring to school students or college going students. This can be, for example, a retired person who's just seeking to update his knowledge, or someone from the industry, or maybe even a housewife, right? So the point of this is, it's giving an opportunity for the student or for the learner to learn at his or her convenience. Again, various tools and resources are available for this. For example, we have a host of services for this. For example, we have Byju's, we have the Khan Academy, we have the MIT's Open Courseware from Massachusetts. We have the iTunes store. A lot of us use iTunes, but the iTunes store has a lot of podcasts and videos available. YouTube is now, becoming a very popular one where people are posting recorded lectures. For example, ASAP is doing that. A lot of people are doing that these days. Then, there is what the Indian government promotes, that's SWAYAM and NPTEL. And there are some more international ones like Coursera and edX. And these are all various tools where the idea is these are all multimedia. The content is pre-recorded and hosted on these various apps, and we as learners or viewers see this pre-recorded sessions at our own convenience. For example, we know that in Coursera, Coursera is now offering a very for educational institutions, they are giving various plans, and we can take, for example, you can take an assignment, any number of times. You can take up to 3 times every 8 hours and things like that. So it's very flexible. You can learn it at any time you want. The next set of tools is what we call Moodle and Google Classroom. This is more like a classroom management software. For example, a lot of us use Google Classroom, where we can automatically keep record of students' marks, attendance, and so on. So these two are Moodle and Google Classroom is more like classroom management software. And different universities across the world will have their own softwares as well, customized for their purpose. Um, then we have the three main apps that are kicking off these days because of for the last 2 months. That is Zoom, Cisco WebEx, and Google Meet. And there are a host of other platforms as well, right? These are all possible because of ICT and multimedia. Again, the content over here for Zoom and like for example WebEx and Google Meet is little different than the other ones, is because most of these are live sessions, right? Whereas the other ones are pre-recorded, right? So a lot of all this is possible because of ICT and multimedia, and this is what the role of ICT and multimedia is outside the classroom. Um, so moving on, and there are various benefits of those, right? So for example, the online videos and lectures and webinars, um, the students or the learners can learn from not only their teachers, but, but any teacher that is around the world. Have one have to interact with the faculty. This provides a nice platform for it. They can post their questions. Other students in the class can see their questions as well. Then it's easy to collect feedback from students, and you can also give additional material that is beyond the syllabus. And the other advantages, like we all know already, is it's accessible on any mobile device. You can learn from home or anywhere at any time. It's purely the convenience of the learning. And another thing is it sort of democratizes education, right? Anyone can do this. Anyone with a decent internet connection and a decent smartphone can do this. Most of these things are free. So all we just need is a learning mindset. Now, as teachers, these platforms like ICT and multimedia is useful because you can have online grading of assignments and tests. Teachers can easily manage student data, and the other main thing is teachers appear to be tech savvy. This coming back to an earlier point. You the students or with every becoming the teacher, the students will also appreciate it. And this gives an opportunity for lifelong learning. For example, like I said, maybe a person who's retired from industry who wants to develop a new skill or maybe learn some other topic. These platforms give a very good venue for all these. Okay, now what I want to go next is, some of my personal experiences after using Google Classroom. I have been using it for the past couple of years, and this is some of the feedback that I got from students. One comment that came up was, they can review their submitted assignments very easily. So they submit their assignment, I mark it and give it back to them. And students can view these or review these assignments, view my comments online. Another comment that came, and this is very common, we return back these assignments by the end of the semester or by the end of the academic year. Probably these assignments are lost. Now, once that happens, now the student doesn't have to worry about it because they already have a digital copy of it. So that's kind of nice, actually. Then the other main advantage that students say is they can easily they can get their marks immediately. For example, if teachers are marking it at night, the students receive the marks at the same time. Now, I did a poll, across students, and I asked them two main questions. One is, how do they access Google Classroom? Google Classroom is um, Google Classroom. It has both a mobile app and can be accessed via a browser as well. So if you go to classroom.google.com, you can see them. And if you just take, I took a feedback from about 30, 35 students, and if you see it, students look at the website about just about 10%. But if you look at the percentage of users on the mobile app, it's about 90%. The second question that I asked is on what device they are using Google Classroom, right? So, the options given to them were desktop, laptop, smartphone, and a tablet. And on a desktop, pretty much no one has been using. Laptop, maybe I don't know, a 5% has been using. Smartphones is 90%, um, and tablets is again, less than 5%. Right. So, this gives a clear picture about, what, how students are spending their time, right? They're going to be using their mobile devices anyway. So, if we can gear their attention towards learning, that is good. Right? So, they're not only using their smartphone, but they're even using a mobile app for it, right? So that's different. So it gives some clear insights into how students are learning. Um, Okay, all right. So now, one thing that we must remember is while various tools are available, it's important that the students and instructors utilize it effectively, right? Like I said earlier, these are all just teaching aids, and every teaching aid will have do's and don'ts, right? For example, you see this figure on this right? This teacher is thinking the student is taking down notes, but that's not what is happening, right? So there are do's and don'ts in any teaching aid. And again, I just mean this as a joke, right? It's do's and don'ts of any teaching aid. Even if you're using the most sophisticated whiteboard or smart classroom, um, it's not just sufficient that there is a smart classroom. It's important that students and teachers know how to utilize it well, or how students are actually learning from it. We might think that students are keeping their mobile phone open and learning, but they might not be actually be learning, right? So that is where the teacher's role comes in. And I must emphasize, I don't personally don't think it's going to be a replacement for teachers. Now, moving on to the second part of my talk, which is about ICT and multimedia in research. Now, students who are, or, people who are doing research understand that there are various steps in research. For example, you must define the problem, you must review the literature, you must see what other people have done, you must select a research design. What I mean is, are we going to do an experimental work, or are we going to do a theoretical work? What are we going to do? We must formulate a hypothesis. This is a sort of question that we're trying to answer, right? And then we must actually carry out the research. And once you do the research, we must get your results. You must report your findings, and then you can constantly improve. There's always scope for improvement. Now, this topic is mainly for people who are graduate students, professors, or researchers in industry, or for anyone who is seeking to improve their skill in a very specialized sector, right? So as researchers, our intended audience is sometimes ourselves. Sometimes you have this math problem that that's been unsolved for the past 10, 20 years, and you just want to solve it just for the fun of it, right? So we just saw the audience is ourselves, right? But most of the time we solve certain problems that is meant for society as well. So the society must appreciate your research work, and for that as well, ICT and multimedia plays a very big role. So when we talk about organizing literature, there is two software, that is Jabref and Mendeley. This is a screenshot of Jabref. So what it does is, this is a software, this is open source, you can download it for free. What it is a software that gives you a place to store all your literature, all your papers that you're reading, all the books that you're reading. You can enter it, and then you can sort it as well. You can search through it. So it makes your life easy, right? If you're doing research over the past 5 years, and after 5 years you want to go back to what you read sometime in the first year, software helps you retrieve it easily. You don't have to go about searching for it, right? So this is one software, Jabref and Mendeley. And then, as researchers, almost all of us will have a research diary, right? Some place where we're making down our observations or what we learn on a daily basis or a weekly basis or whatever, right? Now, there are softwares for that as well. For example, Microsoft's OneNote and Evernote. As you can, the figure that you see on the right is a screenshot from OneNote. You know, these are all like online book. It's like a digital notebook, right? The notebook will have, or that notebook will have various sections. Each section, for example, in this case, I have a section called Research Diary. Each section will have multiple pages. Inside that page, you can have sub pages and so on. And the advantage of this is, you need not only have text in there. You can put in pictures. You can put in snapshots from any software that you're using. Just for you to recollect what happens. Right? So this is another software that is that researchers can use as well. I personally use OneNote a lot. And then, depending on your field of study, um, there will be various relevant softwares available over there as well. For example, I come from an engineering background, so sometimes you had to use MATLAB a lot. You might have to use programming languages. All these are part of ICT and multimedia, right? You are able to do this because of the communication technology that we have. And for example, statisticians might use Excel a lot. Excel is very powerful, but I doubt, I'm not sure how many of us know the entire extent of Excel, right? It seems simple, but for example, how do we do a macro in Excel, right? So every field of study will have their own software. Maybe a plotting software like CAD or Solid Edge, whatever it is, right? So it's important that researchers learn that as well. So in today's lecture, it's not the main topic of today's lecture, so I'm not going to go over it. And there are, the last and important part of research is, publishing and presenting your research. For that, there are various softwares as well, Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, like the one I'm using now. They are very common. Prezi is a presentation software that is coming up quite a lot. It's a little different than Microsoft PowerPoint. It's more like a storytelling way of doing a presentation. It's quite nice actually. There is two other software called LaTeX and Overleaf. So I'll talk about LaTeX. LaTeX again is like a word processing software. So it's relatively quite simple to use. But the output that you get from LaTeX is a very beautiful document. Microsoft Word is what we say is the kind of document is what you see is what you what you type is what you see. So as you type on your keyboard, you're seeing it on your screen. So whereas in LaTeX, what happens is you must type it up and then compile it, and then it will give you an output, right? But the effort is worth it, right? You'll get beautiful documents and things like that. You can make PowerPoint presentations as well using LaTeX. And then because of there is an online version of LaTeX, and that is what Overleaf does. You can get away with installing LaTeX. You simply have to start typing, and Overleaf will do it for you, right? But these are just for your information, right? And the last thing that I want to talk about is right? When we're presenting our work or when you're publishing your research, it's important that we present it well, right? You can't have a very pixelated image and things like that. The picture tells a good story, right? So for that, as a researcher or as a teacher, we must know how to make good quality graphics. For example, must know how to use graphics in a vector format. For example, .svg or .aeps files. Some softwares are there that does it for you. For example, Inkscape. Blender is a software that it's actually an animation software. You can control it using lighting and things like that. So there are things like that, and you can make good three-dimensional figures using Blender. So that's it. So that's a brief about how ICT and research is used. ICT and multimedia is useful in research. Um, so just to summarize, what we have been talking about is the role of ICT or the use of ICT in multimedia in teaching, learning, and the research process. So education is involving. So the teaching, learning also must evolve. Um, Now, as as we do all the rest, like I said, we might be we must keep that in mind as well. How well our students are adapting. They might be using a good smartphone, they might be using a whiteboard, they might be using a fancy tablet, but that doesn't mean they're learning it. So that's the role of the teacher, engaging the student actively and making sure that technology is being used well. Right? Like any technology, it's only as good as a person using, right? Right? And I'll conclude with this quote by Pablo Picasso. I first heard this from a professor we had at the University of Toronto. Right? So computers are useless; they can only give you answers. Right? It's a general statement. It's not the answer that is important. It's we are the person who's asking the question. So that's a caveat when you have to remember when you're using technology. Right? So with that, I conclude. Thank you all for listening to this talk.
Sir,
Thank you.
thank you for the wonderful session, sir. We have a few questions. Shall we proceed with
Okay.
that?
Sure. Yeah.
Sir, the first question is from Raufi Umar. He's a communicative English trainer in secondary level. His question is, do you think taking such classes using multimedia trainer can ensure pedagogical terms? How?
Okay. Uh, it's always good to have um, a teaching aid because, like I said, because if you're teaching a class of 60, say for example, different people will be learning in different ways. Some might be learning based on what you're speaking, right? So they're listening very attentively to you. Some might be learning based on what you're showing them on a slide or maybe an animation, right? So I agree that it's important that you have some teaching aid, and that will help you help across getting across your message about different teaching pedagogies. So whatever your style is, a teaching aid will only enhance it. But you must also remember that when you're using PowerPoint, I have seen some presentations where people put a lot of things on their PowerPoint and simply read slides from their or simply read from their PowerPoint. That, in my mind, is not a very good way of doing it, because if everything is there on the PowerPoint, then there is no point of the speaker, right? So this is where certain do's and don'ts of even using PowerPoint, right? So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir, thank you. I think we can move on to the second question. Can you give some resources where
Okay.
we can convert our contents to digital contents? Sir, is the question clear?
Convert our contents to. I understand the question. The question is asking, is there any software for converting our content to digital content? Is that right?
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes.
Right. I mean, it's very hard. Right? For example, if you're writing, I don't know, converting to digital can either happen at the moment you're writing. For example, if I'm taking the example of writing, right? If I'm taking the example of writing, the at what point does it become digital, right? I can either write directly on my tablet PC. Like say, if I have a tablet PC, I can write it digitally directly on my tablet PC, and then it immediately becomes digital, right? Then the other way of making it digital is maybe I write on a piece of paper and then I take a photo of it and then I upload it. When you're writing some things, and there are a lot of, for example, OneNote, right? OneNote, you can maybe if you after you're taking a picture of the OneNote or whatever, maybe a picture of the piece of paper, and you insert that image in OneNote, then you can search through that image. Most of the softwares nowadays, for example, even Evernote or OneNote, they have something called OCR, that is optical character recognition. So it can even search through, or it can even read through images, right? So I hope that answers the question.
Sir, the question is, what are the security threats in publishing the study materials online?
What are the security threats? There's nothing much like a security threat. It's only much more about a copyright issue. For example, if there are a lot of material available online, it's because people are ready to share their resources for free. But if you're uploading it online and you really want to keep the rights of it, then you must be a little bit more careful, right? Then you must go through a publisher and get a copyright for yourself, and then take care of it, right? So there's not much of a security threat. I think it's more of a copyright issue. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir. The next question is, which online platform is useful for conducting practical classes, which uses machines and experiments?
For dealing with practicals, it's doing a live session and practicals is a very hard question. It's very something hard to do. There are two ways of going about it, in my mind, right? One is you come up with some very good camera setup, and then you live have a live recording of your practical session. You rehearse properly. You take several takes, and then you take a very good recording, and then you post it online, and then people can see you doing the lab, as though you're doing a lab. The other way for doing it is maybe, I think in schools there are some softwares for this, especially for the smart classrooms, where there is content, there's content that is built to run on certain devices. For example, a whiteboard in a smart classroom. For example, if you're taking a chemistry lab, so you take a burette, you take a pipette, and you mix certain concentrations, things like that. You can do it on software. So that is another way for doing a lab. And that can you can so that software must be really good. That is a very the multimedia content over there must be of very good quality, because one, it must give a real life experience, and the other thing is it must be able to handle various cases. For example, what happens if a situation where a student is not mixing as per the instructions? What happens, right? So that software must be able to deal with it properly. So these, I think. So I hope I have answered that question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The next question is, how ICT skills can be improved?
Can be improved. Okay.
Mm.
ICT skills can be improved only purely by practice, in my mind. First, it depends on the learner to take a little bit of initiative. That's the first thing. But once you take that initiative, then it's through practice itself. A lot of softwares are trying to make it more, more accessible and more easy to understand for the general public. When I was doing my graduate studies, I used LaTeX a lot, right? But then after, there was some downtime where I was not using LaTeX. But then when you wanted to start doing it, then you go up online. You go up online and search for things, figure out how it works, and then things will start coming back. There is no easy way out, unfortunately. I think if you keep on using it, I am sure we'll all get good at it. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Thank you, sir. The next question is, sir, would you please show a demo of Google SlideShare with the teacher's voice?
On in PowerPoint, at least in 2012 version, if you go into Insert, on the Insert tab on the top right, there is an option called Screen Recording. This is at least in PowerPoint. I know the question is a little different, but what you can do with this option is, as you're presenting, you can record what you're saying, right? Either through audio or video. That is one option on PowerPoint. I have not used it on Google Slides, so I'm not very familiar with it. So I'll have to look into it. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and thank you all for your patient listening. I know there were some technical issues in between.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for spending your valuable time and for your be a wonderful session. There was some technical issues, but however we managed it, and the session was really informative. And you have covered most of the tools that's required that helps for teaching and research. That was a really a wonderful session. Thank you. Thanks for associating with SAP and taking such a sessions on this platform. Hope our participants will surely be benefited by the session. Once again, thank you, sir, and thanks to all the participants. Stay home and stay safe. Have a good day. Thank you, sir.